Hey guys, welcome back to the booth at Star City Games Regionals. We are in round 9, the final round of Swiss currently.
Yep.
We have a outside shot at top 8 in front of us.
So Lucas, if he wins this round, could potentially sneak into the top 8 in 8th place. He needs a couple things to go his way. Obviously, he needs to win the match, and he needs his breakers to improve and someone ahead of him to have their breakers go down. But it is possible that he could get in, so we're going to cover his match and see if he can play his way into possibly making it in.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is my pet deck. It's actually Abzan, which is very interesting. I thought we were more Jundi.
Nope.
But electing to play a few white spells, Path to Exile primarily being the biggest positive to playing the white cards instead of the red ones.
Path is super, super important. A lot of decks we've seen have been Path to Exile all throughout the day. It's probably the most pound-for-pound powerful removal spell in all of Modern.
I'd say absolutely powerful.
Yeah, it just handles almost every creature that people play. For 1 mana, the drawback of giving them a land often isn't really that big of a deal. There's a lot of decks in Modern that don't really play a lot of basics. It's like something like Affinity. They get their 1 basic, and then all your next year Path Exiles are just straight up removal without any downside.
Yep. Lingering Souls, the other really big payoff card in the white. And Lucas has a single Lockset on Smiter actually in the main board. I love the Lockset on Smiter concession to the current Modern format where there's a lot of Thoughtseizes running around and the Burning Inquiries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right? You discard the Lockset on Smiter, free Smiter.
Here you go. Nice 4/4 trade of that Hollow one. And it gets cast fast enough that it can actually trade with Hollow One in an appropriate time frame rather than coming down a little too late. And
absolutely.
Stephen Rice is playing Red-Green Eldrazi. So this deck is a little bit lower to the ground than some of the larger variants of Eldrazi. It's playing 1 mana creatures, so it's playing things like Noble Hierarch,
Birds of Paradise.
Yep. And it's trying to cast things like Eldrazi Obligator, Mattery Shaper, has Bloodbraid Elf. So this is a much more aggressive slant on your typical Eldrazi variant.
Yeah, Lightning Bolts and a Dismember as a removal package.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas going to keep his 6, lead off with the Verdant Catacombs, no turn 1 play.
It's like, I think I saw did I see Noble Hierarch in Rice's hand?
I think if we're fetching on turn 1 like this, the only cards that we have on 1 are Birds, Noble, and Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah. It certainly has one of them. I mean, the deck plays a whole lot of them. Yep, there we go. Turn 1 Noble Hierarch. In my opinion, this is the ideal start for this deck. It allows you to play your 3 drops on turn 2, and it gives you the ability to cast, another
multiple spells on turn 2.
Yeah, it looks like the way that his hand is set up, he's got an Ancient Stirrings next turn to find whatever land he needs, and then another Noble Hierarch as another follow-up. So he could go something like Ancient Stirrings, find something like a Grove of the Burned Willows or Conclusion Forest, cast the other Noble, get in an attack, and still have developed his mana to the point where he has 4 mana sources in play.
Yep.
And Lucas is sitting on
2 fetch lands currently.
Yeah, did you see what was in his hand? I couldn't quite make it out.
I believe he had a land on top of what we've seen so far. Looks like an Overgrown Tomb. If we're double fetching like this, I'm expecting something along the lines of like a Grimflayer or a Tarmogoyf.
Right. I would agree with that.
Maybe a Collective Brutality. Collective Brutality would actually be pretty good here.
That would be...
Discard a Lingering Souls, kill the Noble Hierarch, take an instant sorcery out of Stephen's hand.
Yeah, if he plays Collective Brutality with Escalate here, this is actually going to be backbreaking because it's going to get rid of a mana source for Noble Hierarch and is almost certainly going to take out Ancient Stirrings, which Stephen is banking on to be able to hit his next land drop. So if it's Brutality in this case, it's going to be a huge play for Lucas. But it looks like a Plains and a Forest.
So probably going to go for a Tarmogoyf, maybe a Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, some other drop. He must have like a... What kind of other lands does he have in his deck? He has some copies of Blooming Marsh, so I have to assume that he has a Blooming Marsh in his hand.
I think he's got an Overgrown Tomb in his hand. Possibly a Blooming Marsh.
Sure. I just think that in spots like this, you have to more aggressively search out, black
your
sources.
Dual lands.
Right, yeah, because if he draws something like Liliana of the Veil, Forest and Plains, he's 2 more lands away from casting it. If he draws a Liliana and doesn't have enough black mana to cast it, he's going to look foolish for doing that.
Ooh, okay.
Oh,
So,
this is nice.
Steven playing one of the very old versions of the Forest.
Yep, the oldest one.
Yeah,
Back to my
it looked
stage.
very much like an artifact card to me, so it didn't register as a land card initially when we were looking at it. That's why I was very puzzled by the Noble Hierarch lead, where we could have gone Ancient Stirrings to find a land, and then possibly cast the Noble Hierarch and get across for 2 points from the Exalted triggers.
Right. Yeah, I like this here. Developing your hand a little bit more is pretty nice here. I would really like for Steven to make sure that he hits his next land drop, because he does have a Reality Smasher in his hand, and even if a Noble Hierarch gets tagged by something like a
Fatal Push or an
Fatal
Abrupt
Push,
Decay.
yeah, or
But even a
Brutality.
Maelstrom Pulse would be strong.
Yeah, it looks like he didn't. Did he not have a land available? I guess he's just taking the more high impact card, but
He does have 4 mana going into the next turn.
I think that there's a lot of upside, though, to being able to cast Reality Smasher and attack for 7, and I just...
Blooming Marsh into Lingering Souls for Lucas.
Right.
Going to get 2 1/1 flying tokens.
I would just be worried in this spot if Lucas had a way to kill one of the Noble Hierarchs, and then Steven just has, one Noble with 2 lands and just doesn't draw a land, that Thought-Knot Seer is just stuck in his hand. It's uncastable. So I mean, it certainly is working out for him in this instance, because he gets to cast a very high impact card here. It could have easily gone poorly for him, though.
Yeah, a Maelstrom Pulse from Lucas would have been backbreaking.
Yeah, that would have just
especially if we didn't take a
Yeah,
land.
he would have been
on.
on. If Maelstrom Pulse was the play, Steven, all the cards in his hand would be straight up uncastable. At this point, I mean, he does get to
I
cast.
think he
either.
does have a Bolt.
He does. Well, okay, so not completely uncastable, but it would be not good.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt does basically nothing in the face of 2 1/1 Spirit tokens.
Yeah, and like here, if his plan is to cast Bloodbraid Elf, I really like making sure you had the land, so that even if a removal spell hits Noble, you still get to cast the Bloodbraid anyways. I think he has to.
Yeah, you bolt the Spirit.
Yeah, that way
You don't trade with the Bloodbraid Elf.
Well,
the Exalted trigger.
yeah, the Exalted trigger is there, but I mean, at the very least, this way you can kind of churn through these things, even if the Nobles get removed in some fashion. And clearing out these creatures will make his subsequent attacks better. Chunking for 5 here.
Steven attacks for 5. Lucas elects not to block with his Spirit token. It's not the greatest chump block. Lucas still at a pretty healthy life total, having fetched basics early.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little bit more to play with before we start permanently chump blocking.
This Inquisition of Kozilek is way too late to the party. I guess there's a Lightning Bolt in Steven's hand, but all the rest of his cards cost 4 more mana. Let's see if he decides to cast it. Well,
Yep, gonna cast the Inquisition of Kozilek, target Steven's hand. The only card that we are able to get at this point is the Lightning Bolt.
yep. Looks like Bolt down, left with a Smasher, another Bloodbraid Elf, and a Thought-Knot Seer here.
Yep. I think this is the point I think we want to go for the Thought-Knot Seer in this next 4 mana spell. Just because 2 Bloodbraid Elves don't look phenomenal, and a Bloodbraid Elf post the Thought-Knot Seer is attacking for more power.
No, I agree. It's probably like the way that Lucas has tapped his mana, he's representing Path Exile. I can't see if he actually has it. I don't think
I believe
he
he's
does.
got a Liliana the Veil, and I think he has
Oh man, that so
another land in hand.
So actually, that so playing not fetching out that swamp earlier actually cost him a little bit. I mean, granted, he would have been able he would have gotten attacked with the Noble Hierarch, so Liliana would have died, but it would have actually stunted Steven's mana by being able to edict a Noble Hierarch earlier in the game, and now it's way too late.
Yep. Liliana the Veil, Temple Garden.
Yep. Yeah. Now Steven's way ahead. Gets to still attack for 5 here.
Yep. Lucas might elect to chump block this time, not go to 6, and then still have 2 tokens to be able to trade with the Bloodbraid later. But Lucas knows that there is a Reality Smasher in Steven's hand, so it's likely that he will chump.
Right. And it's tough for Lucas here too, because regardless of what Steven draws, almost all of his draws are good. He either draws a creature, which likely has haste and can just attack, or he draws lands, which casts the Reality Smasher in his hand, and that's even worse. So,
We're
both-
still live to drawing a Maelstrom Pulse and be able to set Steven back really hard. Draw Maelstrom Pulse, kill the Nobles, double block the Bloodbraid Elf, take 4, go to 7.
That is true. Yeah, he needs to draw something real nice, so that's a nice one.
Yeah, that's a Reality Smasher.
Yep.
Attack for lethal.
He's tapping one too many mana for it, but it doesn't matter too much. I guess you theoretically could tap the Eldrazi Temple for just a single mana instead, but
Yep.
one of those Noble Hierarchs did not need to necessarily get tapped. But at this point in the game, Steven is in a commanding position.
Yeah, I don't believe anything outside of a Settle the Wreckage would get Lucas out of this situation.
Yeah, I don't think he's main decking any either.
I doubt he's playing them today.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. I think more people probably should, but...
I totally agree with that. I think
Yeah.
Settle the Wreckage is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that card should see way more modern play, but new cards take a while to break their way in sometimes. Yep.
Interesting.
All right, so this is all right though. Takes a bunch, fatal pushes. He just needs to find a way to deal with the Smasher and also be able to block a lethal Noble attack.
Yeah, the issue with the Smasher slipping on the floor is we can't play a blocker. We have to be able to play a removal spell to get it off the floor because Tarmogoyf's not going to be big enough because of the Exalted triggers.
I guess he could theoretically have a Scavenging Ooze here and eat a bunch of things, but he's got Grimflayer instead. Oh wait,
Grimflayer and Scavenging Ooze. But we don't have Delirium. We have Instant Sorcery Creature. No, we do. Yeah, Instant Sorcery Creature land.
Right. I guess so. It attacks for 7 here. Oh, I see. Right. Okay. I was missing the Exalted. That is what was changing the math for me. So he has to double block here, and then eat the Thought-Knot Seer, gain a life, and then be able to trade with this.
Yep.
Still rough spot. Looks
Lightning
like
Bolt.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna do it. I mean, also Lightning Bolt was just wait. I guess Steven was slow rolling him a little bit. Lightning Bolt to the face was lethal no matter what.
Yeah, I think once Lucas played both of the threats from his hand, he was just empty-handed.
Yeah,
So there really wasn't anything he could
empty-handed,
do.
a single mana up, could only go to 3 life.
Yep.
Yeah, Steven had that game no matter what he did, pretty much. All right, so going to the sideboard, what do we got?
Lucas, pretty stock Jund lists. Some Wraths, some Graveyard interaction, few, over-the-top threats, some land interaction, Fulminator Mages, Gideon's Damnation.
Right.
The things I really like against this deck are the Fulminator Mages and the Damnation.
No, that's right. Yeah,
Damnation can sweep up any battlefield you can present.
Right.
You don't have to interact with the Reality Smashers, Thought-Knot Seers. Fulminator Mages can set your opponent back, especially if they're on some of the Eldrazi Temple draws.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, Fulminator is weird. It definitely is much better on the play than it is on the draw, but it certainly is at least like more serviceable than some of these other cards. I think that the Damnation is obviously the best thing in his sideboard,
Yeah.
without a doubt. He probably wishes he had more copies of Sweepers, but because something like Flaying Tendrils is like okay, but it can be kind of awkward if your opponent has a Thought-Knot into Reality Smasher draw,
Yep.
whereas it's really good versus a multiple like
Hierarch,
Bloodbraid.
Bloodbraid Elf draw.
Right.
He's got Matter Reshapers, and the Obligator also has 1 toughness.
It's very likely that he is going to bring in Flaying Tendrils because it does pair nicely with any of his removal spells that deal with like a large threat. So he could do something like Tendrils, all the small things, past the large thing, and then he is able to reset the board
Yep.
and possibly get in an advantageous spot. The rest of his sideboard cards are really geared towards combo decks, graveyard-based decks. Something like, Explosives is good versus aggressive decks, but against a deck that's just got 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana creatures, it's not very powerful.
Yep.
As far as Steven goes, let's see what he's got. On the other hand, Steven does have explosive. It's weird. We were talking about this earlier. Explosives, while being a fantastic card in Modern, when you're playing Bloodbraid Elf in your deck, it gets way worse if you have Bloodbraid Elf and explosives at the same time. It can make your Bloodbraid Elf hit just nothing. It is really good versus these Black-Green X decks because it can hit multiple powerful 2-drops at the same time.
Yep, and that's where the Black Green X gets its powerful from, is the Dark Confidants, Tarmogoyfs,
Right.
Scavenging Oozes, Grimflayers.
Yeah, I've played this red-green deck a few times, and I have a few other friends that play it consistently. The most annoying card, without a doubt, from the Black-Green X side is Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
It's always gigantic. things like it can become a 4-5 very easily, so Thought on Seer doesn't necessarily beat in combat. It can sometimes become a 5-6. All of a sudden, Reality Smasher is not big enough. It comes down very quickly, and it can turn the tide, and then once you get rid of the large things on the Eldrazi side, it starts coming in and chunking in for huge amounts of damage.
Yep.
So that card is very powerful against this Eldrazi deck. I think, yeah, it looks like he has a couple copies of Relic of Perigine in his sideboard. I expect those to come in without a doubt.
Yeah, I like the Engineered Explosives a lot. I like the Relics a little bit, but as someone who's played a lot of this Black-Green X in Modern and Legacy, like, everyone brings in the Graveyard Hate against you. It turns off your Death Rights. It turns off your Tarmogoyfs, but the Black-Green X players don't end up caring about it that much.
Right. I wouldn't worry. To me, it's not so much a like card that you're trying to host somebody with. All you're really doing is you just want a card that will replace itself and naturally be able to beat some of the cards that you have a tough time beating. Basically, the fact that it can handle Tarmogoyf on its own is the important thing.
Yeah, I like it a lot better against Lucas's deck because of Lingering Souls and Grimflayer.
That's also a really big part too. Obviously, like against something like Jund, it's not nearly as good.
Yeah.
I would still want it. The big thing to me for Steven is that he has some cards that are not good here. Lightning Bolt, honestly, it often doesn't have very good targets. If Lucas plays smart, things like Grimflayer are going to be out of range.
Yep.
Things like Tarmogoyf are almost always out of range. And also, Eldrazi Obligator is very bad against a deck that just is packing Lingering Souls.
Yes.
So you are almost always sideboarding out all of your Obligators in these kind of matchups.
But on the positive side, it is phenomenal against Tarmogoyf.
It is good there. Although I think that if I was Steven, I'm boarding out like all my Obligators and some bolts, and then bringing in some of the cards in my sideboard that actually interact on a reasonable state. You know, Relic of Perigine, Engineered Explosives.
Yep.
He might trim, like 2 Obligators and 2 bolts and bring those types of cards in. I could easily see that happening.
I could see trimming the Obligators now that we're on the draw. Having Lightning Bolt on the play is pretty good. Sometimes you can catch the Goyfs.
Yeah.
You can always get the Grimflayers and the Scavenge Oozes early, because Lucas can't play a game where he's not deploying a 2-mana threat unless he's playing multiple discard spells.
Right. But yeah, I certainly expect some of those spells to get shaved and then, bring in the spells that actually interact profitably, or at least interact on a 1-for-1 basis. And then it looks like there's a Fatal Push coming to town here. Let's see if Lucas fetches a dual land or a basic this time.
I think he has a basic Swamp in his hand.
Okay.
And he only plays 2, so it's possibly he grabs the second one. But again, this deck is like you're playing the Jund Mirror almost, right? Where this deck's not going to hit you hard and fast. Mm-hmm. It's going to hit you very hard in a single turn.
True.
So you just want access to your colors, fetch your basics, fetch your dual lands however you want to, basically.
Yeah. So this informs me that it looks like he's going to Fatal Push on this turn.
Yep.
And then have likely some type of green source to follow up with a 2-drop of some sort. Verdant Catacombs will work. And he has a basic forest in his hand too.
Yep.
So he drew Verdant Catacombs for the turn, but he had the forest, so he could have deployed a 2-drop if he wanted to.
Brawn Bomber, we have Abzan on the left, and we have Red-Green Eldrazi on the right.
Yep. Let's see. So what does Rice have on his turn 2? A Scavenge Juice.
Ooze is, again, very, very good in these grindy mirrors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Ooze is fantastic here.
Especially so because Ooze is another one of those Tarmogoyf-esque cards where it can get very big very fast and battle very well with your Eldrazi creatures.
Oh, yeah.
If you deploy the first Scavenge Ooze, then you have the control of the graveyard.
Mm-hmm. It also makes cards like Grimflayer much worse.
Yes.
And Lingering
Even
Souls.
Tarmogoyf.
Yep.
You can attack the Tarmogoyf archetype types.
Yep. Tarmogoyf becomes worse. Lingering Souls becomes not a 3+2, it's really a 5 because you need to cast it all at the same time.
Lucas has a Liliana the Veil in hand. I think that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
Liliana the Veil, sacrifice Scavenging Ooze.
Yep, makes sense to me. Yeah, so Ooze down.
The Eldrazi deck, like the only play we have here is Eldrazi Obligator.
Well,
that can get rid of the Liliana.
That's true, but I think that Steven has... Wait.
Matter Reshaper? He does have the Obligator. Go on Obligator, kill the Liliana.
That makes sense.
Yep. That's the only thing Lucas loses the Liliana to that turn,
Right.
and I'm okay with something like that happening, especially because Lucas just drew the Liliana the last hope and can take the Obligator off the floor right
that's
now.
That's pretty nice. That's certainly a nice follow-up here.
And now the only thing that can get this off is Bloodbraid into Bolt.
It's interesting. The Obligator play was, the easy play, but I think that it might have been better to cast Thought-Knot Seer last turn to be able to get rid of that Liliana Last Hope and then be able to have Thought-Knot clear up the Veil the next turn, but
that's playing into a possible removal spell.
I mean, it is. I think that with Lucas tapped out, you just have to take something that gets rid of the Thought-Knot Seer, and you still get to play like your Bloodbraid off this turn, or you can play Obligator the next turn and still have like 2 cards that can take out the Planeswalkers.
Yeah, I'm not big on the Obligator. He had a Matter Reshaper in hand, and that's such a great threat in the face of Abzan with only Path to Exile not drawing you a card.
Right. Yeah, it's weird, right? Because obviously, like the lines kind of converge to this like board state eventually, but taking like Avenue A or Avenue B can lead to you being like slightly ahead or slightly behind. The main reason I like playing the Thought-Knot Seer earlier is that you have a higher likelihood of taking a spell that matters. If you play the Thought-Knot Seer too late, it's possible that your opponent could just have like a Path to Exile on a land, they path your Thought-Knot Seer with a trigger on the stack, they draw another land, and you're like, well, my Thought-Knot Seer didn't actually get anything. But if you play it early, you almost always get a really impactful spell. But it's hard to say exactly, what's right and wrong when a lot of times the top decks are really what dictate what happens in this matchup.
Bomber, this is not exactly for top 8. Top 8 was really close to a clean cut. Lucas has a small outside chance to be able to jump the 8th person on tiebreakers. Mm-hmm. It all depends on how the next few matches play out.
Right. That is exactly right, because Lucas is basically behind the 8-ball tiebreaker-wise, but if he gets a little lucky and wins this match, he could possibly sneak into 8th place.
This is very, very good by Lucas. Lucas is going to be able to protect his Liliana Last Hope. Grim Player is a 4/4 currently because we have a Sorcery in Maelstrom Pulse, Land in Marsh Flats, Planeswalker in Liliana the Veil, and then Fatal Push is our instant.
Yep. That would make it a 4/4.
Plus the Liliana Last Hope, plus making Bloodbraid Elf into a 1/1.
Right, so even if Steven has something like a Relic of Progenitus to shrink the Grim Flare, that Bloodbraid Elf is still not large enough to get past it.
Yes, the Bloodbraid Elf is smaller.
Yeah, and in this spot here, Lucas is actually getting a little close to turning the tide.
This is one of the avenues to fight these Eldrazi decks is the small incremental advantages that you can get off of playing very powerful cards.
Mm-hmm. Steven does have 2 Matter Reshapers and another Thought-Knot Seer in his hand, so Lucas is going to have to draw some high-powered cards here to get out of the spot. I would assume that, he's going to make the Thought-Knot Seer a little bit smaller. Play another Grim
4/4 Grim Player.
That is not bad. He's really probably banking on drawing a spell that'll allow the Grim Players to get in for more. Alright, Ancient Stirrings is a nice one. Let's see what he finds.
Best draw spell in Modern,
Right.
featured in the match currently.
Yep. And this here is another reason why I like playing the Thought-Knot Seers pretty much as early as possible, because Steven right now has another Thought-Knot in his hand, and sure, a 4/4 is not bad, but it's still, if it ever gets removed, will draw Lucas a card, and right now that Thought-Knot Seer is actually a little bit of a liability if Lucas finds removal spells to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, and the fact that our Grim Players are bigger than every creature that is currently on Steven's side just blanks the fact that we could attack for 4, but then you trade Grimflayer, draw Lucas a card, and you only took a Scavenging Ooze out of his hand.
Right, exactly. So it looks like he's going to play Reshaper here, and then set up for Obligator next turn.
I think it's still a mana short for Obligator.
No, because he has a Temple and Mountain to cast Obligator, and then Forest Forest to activate the ability.
So he tapped too many mana on... Oh no, he tapped 2 for the Reshaper.
Right, yeah. He Stirrings for the Obligator.
Obligator.
Yeah, and then Temple. Yeah. All right.
It's still tough because the Obligator is going to be able to take one of these cards. Probably. Gosh. I want to take a Grim Flayer because when we hit with the Flayer, it's such a huge advantage to us because we get to look at the top 3 and filter through cards. But the Goyf's bigger than everything else.
So let's see. So if he plays Obligator and takes Grim Flayer, he's going to have 5 creatures to Lucas's 2. He's going to be able to... The other question here, too, is where do you send your attacks? Do you send them... what do you attack? Do you attack Liliana with some of them, some at Lucas? Do you attack all at Liliana? Do you...
I think the fact that Steven's going to play an Obligator means that we want to get the last hope off the battlefields.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because it's just a straight removal spell against the X1.
So we probably are taking a Grim Flayer. Yep.
Yeah, and Lucas is poised not to block a Grim Flayer because it'll be killing 1 to 2 of his own creatures. That's interesting.
This is so.
I can't say I like this attack because if Lucas blocks with the Goyf, just the Grim Flayer goes away. He keeps the Liliana. He can kill the Obligator next turn, and his creatures are still bigger than everything else.
Right.
And we're gonna get out of Liliana dying to the Matter Reshaper or the Bloodbraid Elf going unblocked.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I don't really think that this is the line that Steve was supposed to take. Now he's, as you said, just looking at his Obligator getting eaten by this Liliana. As you said, in a very similar spot. Oh man,
Tireless Tracker's great.
Yeah, it's pretty nice here. Certainly hopes that he can have it survive another turn so that he can start, getting some clue action on.
Yeah, like we said earlier, the Liliana can survive the next attack barring no Bloodbraid or other Eldrazi Obligator.
Right.
And we don't have to block with the Tireless Tracker at all. But it looks like a Bolt's coming. Okay.
So that clears out that.
I can't say I like that much from Steven. Lucas is probably not likely to block with the Tireless Tracker. And he's likely to just make strong blocks against the Thought-Knot Seer. So you could get the Goyf off the floor. But Tireless Tracker does become a giant threat the longer the game goes on.
Yeah. I guess, so this plussing Liliana here does reduce the Thought-Knot Seer so you can get a double block in, or you can block 2 different creatures, but Steven also can just attack in. The other play here is to get back Grim Flayer.
Ooh.
Oh,
that is a very good turn.
Yeah, he drew another tracker. So now he's got, the battlefield is definitely in Lucas's favor. I think that Steven really needs to find a Relic of Progenitus. If he's
got a Reality Smasher in hand.
That's not bad. Only problem is that I'm pretty
demanding on the board. I think Goyf's the only creature big enough to rumble with it.
I think Charmed Goyf is larger than it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Goyf's a 5/6 because Planeswalker.
Yep. So I'm pretty sure that
Fatal Push lands, Liliana, Maelstrom Pulse Sorcery, Tireless Tracker's creature. So Goyf's definitely a 5/6.
Yep. Yeah, you just can't attack here. It's also possible that if
Lucas confirming if the text on Reality Smasher says spell or ability.
Yep. It only says spell. But in this spot here, if Lucas drew a land, what he could do is get back the other tracker, play it, and then play a land from his hand, get 2 clues. Trackers kind of go off, but it looks like he drew a spell instead. Another Grim Flayer.
Third Grim Flayer.
Yeah, he's just been running creatures every turn, but I mean, this deck is chock full of them.
Really interesting when you're playing 2 mana creatures that are bigger than Eldrazi.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Steven just can't attack.
He might have a Dismember in hand. Trying to set up for a follow-up turn. I think he's got a Bolt.
Yeah, he has a Bolt and the second Thought-Knot Seer that's been stuck in his hand the whole time.
Yeah, I think it's kind of good holding the Bolt here. Tireless Tracker hasn't really done anything. If he draws a land, that's a land draw. We're going to shake that off. If he minuses the Liliana, though, we can get that off the battlefield with the Lightning Bolt.
That's true. And Lucas is probably considering if he wants to plus or go down, but looks like he's going to plus.
Ooh, are we getting feisty?
I don't
3, 6, 9,
I don't think he's supposed
10, 11,
to.
12, 13, 14, 15. It's lethal on board, providing nothing else.
Well, I mean, Steven can make a lot of blocks here that are relatively advantageous for him.
Well, I mean, if Lucas doesn't have lethal,
Huh. Okay, so
Grim Flares.
so if I'm Steven, how am I blocking here? The Matter Reshapers you definitely want to trade off in combat. You want to try to find some action. You probably want to trade off with as many Grim Flares as possible. You might want to do something like block 2 Reshapers on a Grim Flare. Thought-Knot Seer blocks another Grim Flare, and then Bloodbraid and Matter Reshaper block the last Grim Flare. But it looks like he's just going to opt for just those 2 instead.
Yeah, so only one Grim Flare is going to be able to come through with trample damage.
Right. I wonder what they're discussing.
I think it's something about damage assignment.
That's fair. Oh, it's also possible. Oh, so they're looking for active player, non-active player. So what's going to happen is that Steven's triggers are all going to resolve. Or wait,
But Lucas is active player,
right? But
so they would go on the stack first.
Well, right. So then Steven should resolve first. I think that was incorrect, but anyways. Looks like he's going to be able to follow up with Thought-Knot Seer to be able to... Oh, wait. Oh, no, this is... Oh, that's right. This is still Lucas's turn. Oh, jeez.
Tarmogoyf followed up by a Lingering Souls. Very, very strong.
Yep. Yeah,
A land would have been acceptable as well. Get a clue token from the Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, Lucas has put himself in a spot where basically every draw in his deck is good. It was Entry Explosive on the top. That is not bad.
That'd be very, very strong against this battlefield. To clear up the 2 Goyfs and the Grim Flare. And then you can get in, I believe, with the Reality Smasher.
I think so.
Yeah, if you attack the Bloodbraid and the Reality Smasher, you trade board, and Lucas is left with just a Liliana the Lasso, which is still not great.
Yeah, so what's likely to happen here is he'll prop the explosives for 2, get rid of those 3.
Lightning Bolt the Tireless Tracker.
Yep. And then he'll be able to attack Liliana for 5.
3. Liliana plus the target the Reality Smasher.
Well, so the Reality Smasher is a 2/3, right?
Yep. We'll probably double block the Bloodbraid Elf with the Spirit tokens.
Right. I don't know why he's not Lightning Bolt. Or I guess, so he wants to try to hit Liliana for 2 and then bolt it afterwards. But if the Tireless Tracker blocks, he's still fine with trading.
Reality Smasher is a 3/4, I think, right now.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, good call. For some reason, I thought it was a 2. I think I was thinking of Thought-Knot Seer power on top of this. Yeah, so he's willing to just let that go down. He's going to Lightning Bolt it to finish it off. Yep. So we've got...
Lucas is all right with these things because any draw at this point is a live draw for him.
Yep. It's either going
A
to be
land draws him another card. A spell is something we can play.
Right, exactly. All right, that's good. Let's see what it is. Land. Okay. Get a clue.
Not big on untapped.
Yeah, I don't know if I do that. I mean, he doesn't have a Lingering Souls in graveyard.
Yeah, so
he
very likely he's going to crack clue, draw a card, cast Lingering Souls, and if he draws any other 2-drop in his deck, then I think that was an Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, it was.
So,
I mean, unfortunately, Abrupt Decay is not good against Reality Smasher.
Yeah.
It's also not good versus Thought-Knot Seer.
But it might be able to catch something that Steven hits off of his Ancient Stirrings.
I mean, that's true. The only problem is that Steven is very likely to play Thought-Knot Seer next turn, and it's just going to take Abrupt Decay, because there's going to be no targets for it. I mean, it's possible that Steven could sequence it differently, but it's likely that Steven is going to sequence it with Thought-Knot Seer first. We'll see if he does.
He might go Ancient Stirrings first.
That's also possible. He might find a Reality Smasher and he wants to cast that instead.
Another Engineering Explosives, Eldrazi Obligator. Obligator would be really, really good in this situation.
I like taking Relic here. It makes all subsequent Tarmogoyfs, Grim Flayers very bad. Really, I mean, he's also able to play Thought-Knot here and still be able to play the Relic and get it onto the battlefield.
Yeah, the Obligator, as nice as it would be to steal the Tireless Tracker, it just gets eaten down by a Spirit.
Yeah, I do not think you're supposed to play Obligator here. I think you're supposed to save Obligator for a later turn. I think you're supposed... I mean, obviously we can see their hand, so we know what's likely to be played, but I think that playing Thought-Knot Seer here and knowing what's going on allows you to develop your board, because what can happen here is you play Thought-Knot, you see if the coast is clear, and then you're able to play Noble Hierarch, or... So this play, it might seem better for him, but in this case here, he's actually giving a target for the Abrupt Decay. I guess he's saving, I don't know if he's trying to save Thought-Knot for a later turn, but Thought-Knot has just been in his hand this whole time.
I think he got 2 now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I really don't agree with this. I think that you're supposed to, like, if he just played Thought-Knot there, he can play Thought-Knot Seer, take the Abrupt Decay, play Noble Hierarch, and attack him for 6. And then he has a Thought-Knot Seer and a Reality Smasher. It forces Lucas to probably hold back the Tireless Tracker, and then the Reality Smasher can just attack. The Tireless Tracker's going to have to trade with it the next turn in order for it to really do anything. I think that I would have taken a much different line if I was Steven, but we'll see what happens here.
Lucas also has lethal in 2 turns. Attacks here, puts his opponent to 5.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's
really biting the bullet on the fact that he played the Noble first.
Yeah, this is like the worst case scenario. Is if he had gone with the other line of playing Thought-Knot into Noble, he gets to take the Abrupt Decay, have the Noble Hierarch in play, and that Liliana is just almost dead. It would get rid of a Noble Hierarch, and it would get rid of, or it would get a card out of his hand, which, I mean, sure, you get a Thought-Knot Seer out, not a big deal. You still have a Thought-Knot Seer in play and a Reality Smasher in play versus no Thought-Knot Seer, no Reality Smasher.
Yeah, even if he went with the Relic Thought-Knot Seer plan, like play Thought-Knot Seer, play Relic, crack Relic, you still just let the Thought-Knot Seer go to the sacrifice if I can still have the Reality Smasher. Having trample is very important.
Yeah, the Reality Smasher was the way that he could win here. And now we got a 4/4 that when it likely dies is going to draw Lucas a card.
EE on 0. Clean up the Spirit tokens.
That's true.
Fine. You know, we're not dead on board to removal spell attack.
Yeah, jeez. Yep, plus that. Get rid of the Thought-Knot Seer. I'm pretty sure, you can afford to swing out here.
Because you have the Goyf for a backup attack later.
Yeah, I think that Steven is pretty priced into getting rid of these Lingering Souls tokens, no matter what.
No.
He just has to hope that he draws into something. Probably an Obligator is the only thing that can get him out of this game.
Yeah, I think Obligator is some number of points short.
Well, it would steal a Tarmogoyf and it would be lethal.
I don't know how big Tarmogoyf is currently.
Well, it's got creature,
artifact, sorcery. I think that's it.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
Because the Abrupt Decay was exiled. Yeah, so I think it's just a 3/4 Goyf, and it's just an attack for 6.
Oh, that's true. That's actually funny that Relic Progenitor, this crack, actually cost him the ability to possibly get back out of this. He's just putting him to...
I think that was incorrect by Steven.
Putting him to 5. I mean, I'm not
Put him to 5, put the Goyf in the graveyard, or the Liliana in the graveyard, makes Goyf 1 power bigger.
So it's now a 4/5.
If Lucas can cast an instant and put a land into the graveyard, then it's a lethal Goyf attack.
That's true. Yeah, this is weird because in a lot of spots you would have thought that top decked Eldrazi Obligator would just won the game on the spot, but because all those cards were exiled earlier, it was actually short.
Multiple points.
Yeah, so attack 4.
Put him to 2. Pass turn. Lucas has to have some form of a removal spell.
Jeez, are you kidding me? Wow!
What did we
Oh
have?
man, 2
Thoughtseize.
Thoughtseizes. Wow.
So disgusting.
Oh my goodness. Wow. All right. Well, those top decks were brutal.
Yeah,
for
that's
Lucas.
about
Holy
as
crap.
that's what we do as Jund right there.
Yeah.
You play the match fairly decently well, and then your opponent flips a reality smasher, and we're pretty dead.
And you just your Thoughtseize is too late, and you're like, well,
Another thing that probably kills Lucas in that situation is like Blood Braid into another Obligator, or like Blood Braid into a Bolt, or a Dismember.
that's true.